This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
How is it possible that we live life at 90 miles an hour but never seem to get to where we want to be? Why do we have more material goods, more access to information, more ways to interact than ever before, yet still feel unfulfilled? Why are we better off than any society in history, yet often feel tapped out, unmotivated, overworked, and unsatisfied? Each of those questions has the same answer. We are not practicing awareness. That statement seems pretty simple on the surface, but to practice awareness, you have to stop. Stop running from one activity to the next. Stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Stop trying to be who others think you should be. When you stop all of these things, you give yourself space to quiet your mind, reflect on your experiences, and get to know yourself better. And when you know yourself better, you can identify what you want out of life and pursue it, which leads to a more fulfilled life. The journey to fulfillment begins with an awareness of who you are. Traveling a road of personal growth, you will become aware of what makes you tick, what gives you energy when you think about a certain topic, subject, or pursuit, and what drains every last drop of energy. You may not always like what you discover, but you will be inspired by it. The point is to become aware of who you are and who you're becoming. The journey of self-awareness is powerful because increased awareness brings increased understanding, and increased understanding empowers you to make changes in your life that last. In this episode, Valeria Teles interviews Robert Commodari about awareness, which is one of the many messages in his book, Better Than You Think, Developing Awareness for a More Fulfilling Life. Rob comes from a family of 7 siblings growing up in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 745-square-foot house in northeast Baltimore City. He is the son of an Italian immigrant and a red-haired German. Money was hard to come by while growing up. Rob started working at age 11, delivering newspapers, and paid his own tuition through high school and college. He played baseball in college while attending Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida. After graduating from FAU, Rob took a job as a stockbroker in North Palm Beach, Florida. Arriving early for work in July of 1990, he noticed a book sitting on his mentor's desk, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino, which he asked to borrow that evening. Rob finished reading the book that evening and hasn't looked back since. It was after reading The Greatest Salesman in the World and Part 2 of Og's bestseller that Rob had the inspiration to write and speak. Rob began his goal of writing in the winter of 1992, but had never set a goal to write a book or speak until 2001. It was spring of 2001 when he gave his first inspirational speech to a crowd of approximately 650 people. He was then encouraged to join Toastmasters, an international speaking organization, to hone his skills as a speaker. It was in 2005 when he wrote a goal to write a book. Rob knew he wanted the book to be centered on the theme of awareness, but didn't feel worthy enough of being an author. He struggled for years and wrote sparingly before he finally committed to finish the writing of his book in January of 2017. A serial entrepreneur, Rob has been involved in several businesses. He had his own newspaper business from 1994 through December 31st of 2003. Rob was partners in a cigar business in the mid-90s. He has flipped a few houses over the years and has spoken to several organizations over that time as well. He has spoken to organizations such as Wells Fargo, Sherwin-Williams, Wachovia, M&T Bank, BB&T Bank, the Baltimore Sun, and others. Rob has spoken to students at schools and inmates in prisons several times. When Rob speaks, he is moved by the Spirit to connect with others and to inspire others to realize their dreams. To read Rob's full biography, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Here is the interview with Robert Commodari.
In your own words, who is Rob Commodari?
Wow, that's a great question. So I like to look at myself as a passionate guy about life, guy who wants to get the most out of his life and help others get the most out of their lives. I love the question. I'm a tenacious guy. I'm a guy that's got a resolve about himself that when he gets knocked down, he's going to get back up because he knows there's no other way, because you sit down and cry victim, no one's going to help you. So I'm a God-fearing man. I want to live my life to the fullest and the fullest to serve him. I don't know. Is that good?
Very good. Yeah, thank you. So before I ask you some questions related to your book, Better Than You Think, I have a few general questions. What is another word for life?
There's this book that I've read maybe 8 or 9 times, and it's called The Way to Love. I know we're talking about my book a little bit here in a little bit, but this book talks about how do you get to that place of love. And me personally, from reading that book, I've formulated some of my own philosophy. And it's like it starts with awareness, then an understanding, and an acceptance, and then love. And when you have love, there's no room for judgment. And we live in a very judgmental world. I think if we go through life and we be love, we show love, we give love to everybody, it's a beautiful place.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I love that. I have to use the same word. Do you connect love or this way of defining love to God or the idea of God?
I do. I think I don't know the different, I guess it's the Greek words, agape love and, the different forms of love, but I do believe, God is love.
Yeah, so do I. What do you think freedom is? To be free, what does it mean to you?
Well, that's chapter 15.
Right.
That's great. That is cute. Great. I love that. So freedom, because that's my chapter 15 title. So freedom is like, you can have choices, which gives you freedom. But I think ultimately there's a peace within us all that if we get there, we experience freedom. And then the next question is, how do you get that peace or peace and fulfillment, if you will? I think of times of, how I meditate. And when I meditate, I get myself to a quiet place and you get rid of all these distractions. And what that helps me do, I think, over time is when these distractions come at you from different angles and different places and different voices, if you got a strong foundation from a place of meditation and spirituality, then you are free to deal with that how you choose, which is going to be a more peaceful way. They talk about freedom, freedom that you can do what you want, say what you want, go where you want. That's freedom. Free to me is like doing the best, being aware, knowing you did the best you could every step of the way. And then you don't have any anxiety or fear after that.
Yeah, that's the place to be, right? You made me think about peace now. So peace is a state of mind or a state of living, of being. How is it different from being calm?
Wow, and you're asking some great questions here. So the difference between the state of mind peace, the state of being peace, and a state of calm. That's what.
Yes. Yeah.
So I can have a calm mind, meaning something comes at me, and I can just answer in a calm, reserved way. Peace, I think I see as a form or a way of being fulfilled, like somebody, like, did you make peace with somebody? That doesn't mean did you make calm with somebody. Did you make peace with somebody? Was there like, there's nothing in you or about you that is, let's say, poisonous. There's nothing in you or about you that's anxious. You're at peace with what you've done, with what you've said, with what you've accomplished. You're at peace with that. I don't know that you can say I'm at calm with that, right?
That's a good point. So in a way, calm could be a state of mind then. It's not a state of being. It's a state of mind that can be achieved by external things, just being, I don't know, around nature or during meditation.
Yeah, well, yeah. But see, you could be at peace in nature too, because I think what I've done a lot of reading of lately is like, get yourself connected with nature, because nature is life, and it's calming, right? Not nature is calming, but it's also peaceful, right? So I'm thinking about, you're taking me in, like, this is like ad libbed or impromptu, but I love the way you're making me think here. And but it's like, I haven't gotten outside and meditated in nature like I would like to. Like, I have a room, I sit in a chair, I have the lights off, close my eyes, and I meditate, But then if you quiet your mind and then you really hear, like, the birds and the wind and the rain, when you hear that, do you connect with that?
So true. There's so much wisdom, right, in nature. One of the things that I realized that we are not apart from nature. We are just nature itself.
I agree with you.
What is your greatest joy?
Right. Like, at this stage in my life, like, I have three children. My two youngest children are great. I mean, high school and just starting college. And it brings me joy when I see them doing things that make them happy, when I see them overcoming their fears, when I hear them express transparency in their own way, because it's important to me. Like, I think about when I feel joy, and maybe it's when, like, as a parent, when you say something over and over and over and over throughout the years with your children, and they don't listen, and all of a sudden they do something, and you're like, wow, that brings me joy.
Right. To know that they are listening to better their lives.
Correct. For them. Not for me, but for them.
Right. That's beautiful. What do you think is the world's greatest need?
I'll go back to the word love. I think the world's greatest need is it needs to be more loving, more gracious, because I think we let money and society dictate the way we think it should be instead of the way it really is, or the way it really should be, I should say. Because I think it's love, compassion, empathy. Those words come to mind.
Yeah, kindness. Yeah, that makes so much sense. What do you think is the purpose of your life?
I believe I'm called to inspire and impact people to be the best they can be, to reach their fullest potential, which you're never ever going to reach your full potential, but to keep pushing yourself to the outer limits. Because if I can use this analogy, I say to people often that when I die, when I'm laying in my coffin and somebody's up on the altar or giving my eulogy, the last thing I want to hear them say is, "Man, Rob had all the potential in the world." I'll jump out of my casket and go for a choke him, right? I want to hear that. I want to hear that Rob ran out of gas. That's what I want to hear.
That's funny.
And I want to run out of gas in my lifetime. And I want those who I associate with I want to help them run out of gas. And I don't mean to be tired. I mean, just to get the fullest, or experience the fullest life you can possibly experience.
What a wonderful thing to achieve, right, in this lifetime. That makes me think about fear. So how do we overcome self-doubt and fear to achieve this amazing goal?
It's not easy.
That's
I think,
sure.
fear, fear is always going to be there, and you've heard the act or the cliche, false evidence appearing real. And courage, you've heard, courage is moving forward despite the fear, and it's like leaning into your fears. I mean, look, I experience fear often, and I try to trust. I call it because it's in the book too. I talk about the voice inside, and sometimes that voice is talking to us, and we know it's a good thing, but we're just afraid to go forward in fear of not knowing what the outcome will be. But if you really are connected to that voice inside of you, and it's a good thing, then the idea is to move forward despite the fear and let the outcome be what it may, and then deal with it when you deal with it. It's like getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you said. Trust. Yeah, trusting that voice. That voice, do you also call it intuition?
Intuition, consciousness, Holy Spirit. It could be any of those.
Okay. So are they all the same thing?
I believe so. Intuition, I don't know if intuition is voice as much as like I feel the Holy Spirit and consciousness talking to you. Because I know, like I had a daughter at a very young age, and I felt like for whatever reason, maybe it was supposed to be this way or whatever, but I just felt like since that time frame, I've had a pretty good intuition about things. Like some people might complain that, hey, things happen to you, but they really don't. They happen for you. And so things happen for me, they happen for you, and they happen for us for whatever reason they happen for. But the idea is to embrace that instead of fighting it or complaining about it or crying victim.
What a great thing. Yeah, reference to have or wisdom to have, right? Not to play victim, right? So speaking of intuition and that inner voice, how do we know the difference between that and values, our own beliefs and dreams?
So I'd like to, and I hope this answers the question here. I'd like to think of, I've heard the line a long time ago, when your values are clear, your decisions are easy. So I like to play in that. So if your values are clear, and then you say, okay, that voice and that intuition, right? So when you have this intuitive moment, or when you hear this voice at any given time, is it in line with your values? And that's the question I think you got to ask yourself. And I think if it is, then that's a good thing. If it's not, just maybe it's a test, or maybe it's not maybe it's the bad voice trying to get you to do something that's not you.
Right. Right.
But I think we all have I guess the answer to one part is that you got to know what your values are. And if you know what your values are, then you know if it's in alignment or not in alignment. But I think we all should have the, I guess, logic or common sense to if the voice says go rob a bank, that's a bad thing. So you're not going to listen to that voice.
Right.
But if the voice says, go pay somebody, pay something for it, or go buy dinner for somebody, that's a good voice,
I agree. So in a way, values and beliefs, are they the same?
I think we develop beliefs. I think values are within us. I'm just thinking. I'm thinking out loud as you're asking the question. What do I believe and what do I value? I do value my time. I do value my spirituality. I believe that my spirituality is strong. So I think they play off each other. I do not think they're one and the same.
Okay. So values, beliefs, they can be different. That's interesting what you said. So values, something that is within, and beliefs can be a thought, could be something inserted from the environment, society, and other people.
I agree with what you just said there, because you can develop beliefs from your environment, from the people you hang out with. But I think beliefs are more maybe I'm wrong in saying this, more philosophical. It's a philosophy you develop, like I believe this.
They're not necessarily true, right, to you, right? You just mentioned spirituality. What is the difference between being spiritual and being religious?
I mean, I've heard this over and over again. Like, religious is like, I think the proper word here is dogma. Like, so what's the Hindu religion say? What's the Catholic religion say? What's the Buddhist religion say? Spirituality, I think, is a connection to God. It's a connection within yourself to God, and some people might call it a higher power. But I think spirituality is a way of living, a way is within, and religion is, again, it's outside dogma that says you should do this according to this and according to that.
Right. In a way, we go back to values and beliefs then.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
They're similar. What inspired you to become a speaker and then an author?
So it was, I got a long story on that one. So what happened was I finished college in 1990, and I was done writing papers for college. I was done reading. I didn't want any part of that. And I walked into the office one day. I became a stockbroker at the time. And I walked in the office one day, and a guy next to me in his cubicle lay a book. It was called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. And I never sold anything in my life. And I'm like, I need to read that book. So I asked the gentleman if I could borrow the book. I took it home that night, read the whole thing, and my life, the trajectory of my life changed that night. And I read every one of Og Mandino's books from that point forward. And he talked about, in his second book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, Part 2, he talked about how, like, in the story, the guy, he's the richest, one of the richest guys in the world, and he's got all this money. And then he talks about having to give it away, and how is he going to give it away? And he talks about talking to people and becoming a great orator. And I'm like, it was resonating with me. And I'm like, I think I would love to do that one day. I would love to be an ultimate philanthropist. I would love to be able to give and give and give and help people in ways that, you can't, or you don't think you can. I've read, since that day, I've read probably about 900 books. And I believe we all have a book inside of us. And I'm like, I really feel called and compelled to help people be the best they can be. And I'm like, I've read enough of these books. I can write one of these books. It was in 2001 when I wrote it down as like a dream or a thought. In 2005, I made it a goal, and I didn't think I was good enough. I wrote one chapter in 05. I wrote one chapter in 09. I wrote 2 chapters in 14. And all the while, I'm like, who's going to listen to my stuff? Who's going to read my stuff? Who am I to think I'm good enough to share this with? Until it was 2017 when I committed, because I guess I had the confidence, and I felt that I had enough knowledge, and I felt the Spirit talking to me. And I'm like, if this is what I'm supposed to do, let's go do it.
Wow. And then you wrote Better Than You Think. There was your first book?
Yes, correct.
Why did you write that book?
So I started Toastmasters. You know what Toastmasters is, by the way?
No, I actually don't. I don't know what that is.
So Toastmasters is a public speaking forum to help you become a better speaker. And, you asked me about, I answered the one part about the book. I didn't answer the speaking thing. So I wanted to be that orator, so to speak. And I wanted to learn the skill of speaking in public. So I joined this thing called Toastmasters. I had a lot of knowledge underneath my belt of what personal growth and self-help is, but I didn't understand the story part of it. And I was in a contest one time, and they said, Rob, you're a good speaker, but you could be a great speaker if you told stories, if you incorporated stories. So what I've done over the years is I reflect on stories, and I create like this story file of my life. And like you have a story file in your life, and how many stories do you have? And those stories together can come together in a book. And so my thought would be, I want to write a book that is going to be a compilation of a lot of personal stories in my life. What were the lessons I learned, and how can you, the reader, apply those lessons? But the idea is, for when you're reading one of my stories, I don't want you to say, hey, Rob, that was a great story. Thanks for sharing. I want that story to resonate with you, and maybe connect you with one of your past stories, and see how that resonates and what you can learn from that.
Yeah, that's such a powerful method, isn't it? For wisdom, self-knowledge, and everything between.
It's been very fulfilling, very fulfilling.
So in your book, you talk about the importance of practicing awareness. Talk to me about awareness. What is it exactly? Are you talking about self-awareness? Would that be the same thing? Self-knowledge, being conscientious?
For me, that's the main thing. Awareness of the more aware I become of myself, then the more understanding I become of myself, the more accepting I become of myself, then the more I love myself. And when I can do that for me, then I can do it for others. I love, you ever have that, when you have that aha moment,
Yeah. Oh,
Don't
yeah.
you like that? Isn't that really cool?
Yes,
Right. So
absolutely.
wouldn't you love to have, like, I
Mm.
want to be 90 years old and I want to have aha moments.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. So I want, it's just so special to me. And how do you get there? How do it's reading, it's meditation, it's experiences, when it's a combination of all this stuff. But I really believe the key to having a higher level awareness is meditation and prayer.
Oh, in prayer too. So, self love. Do you believe in unconditional self love?
Hard place to get to, but I do believe in it.
Yeah. What would that look like?
So have you ever done like something wrong? And you're like, man, I can't believe I did that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. In the past. Yeah. Sure.
And what happens? You sometimes you beat yourself up for an hour, a day, a week, a month, however long it is. You just beat yourself up, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's
Yes.
not unconditional love of self, right?
Right. Right.
So I think so to get to, can we get to that point? I don't think you ever get to a spot and stay there. And I mentioned this in my book. So I want people to develop awareness to live a more fulfilled life. So there's things to do to get there and experience fulfillment. But you're going to have a bad day. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to drift. You're going to fall off the path. But then how do I get back on there? By reading, by meditating, by reliving, reflecting on my experiences in life, and that can take me back to a place of fulfillment. So I don't ever think you stay there. It's always a work in progress, and self-awareness is like when you make a mistake or when you're about to make a decision and you feel that anxiety build up in your system, then you're aware of what happens when you have a decision make. You get this anxiety, and you can make one of two decisions. You can say, okay, I can't do this. I'm going to bury my head in the sand. There's no way I can do this. Or you can say, I'm ready to go.
I like that. What a great attitude. Talk to me some more about self-awareness. What are some of the methods that we can use? I know you mentioned it's meditation and prayer, two different methods or one and the same?
No, I definitely believe it's two different methods, because there's, prayer, you're either like in the Catholic religion, you praise, you give thanks, and you ask. Prayer. It's called prayer petition, I guess you could say. Meditation, to me, the way I practice it is just quieting the mind to a place of nothingness, which is extremely, extremely hard to do. And it's just like you're listening, and you're not going to experience the fruits of that so-called labor like the minute you do it. What's happened for me, I remember there was a period for 6 years, Monday through Friday, every day, I would go to church and I would meditate for about 30 minutes. And I would do some journaling, some reading, and then meditate. And it was a period of 6 years. I was like very consistent with it. And I remember during that time frame, there would be moments when I would hear something. I'm like, wow, I heard that a million times, but I get it this time. I get it. And I think what the meditation does, it opens up the airwaves for you to receive whether it's knowledge or wisdom or nuggets of information that were always there, but the wires were so kinked that you couldn't receive the frequency. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Because now you're more open to the subtle kind of world or realities exist besides this one. Does it have to do also with that voice that we talked earlier? Intuition, values, listening, being in touch with that place. Is that the state that we get to in meditation?
I don't know if it's the state you get to, but I do believe you would hear that voice clearer. I do believe your intuitions will be sharper. I do believe the self-awareness is increased because of that. I totally 100% believe that.
What do you really speak of when you talk about meditations being at that place that there's nothing really, no thoughts?
So I can tell you what like my experience has been. And so like I would use this thing first. This is how we get to that place. So there's so many different forms of meditation, right? So I would use, me personally, is what I've done over the years is called contemplative prayer. And what you do, you start off with centering prayer, which leads you to contemplative. And the idea is when you first sit down to quiet your mind, you're not going to go from like all this noise to nothingness. It's not going to happen. There's too many thoughts going through your head in the moment. So I would sit there and I get myself in a calm, comfortable position and close my eyes. And like my word, like I would use one word for centering it would be peace. And anytime a thought or distraction would come to my mind, it would be peace, 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 peace. And then eventually you're not thinking peace anymore. You're not thinking anything. And the next thing you know, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes go by and you're like, what just happened? And you don't know, but you know you were in a place of calm and a place of peace.
Would you describe that place as nothingness or light?
I would call it nothingness. I'm light. Let me put it that way.
Right. Would you say that self-awareness, self-knowledge brings us to this idea of being true to ourselves, doing what matters to us? Is that another thing we learn?
I think you can learn it. I think you can develop that over time. I know it's not easy, because I think what happens for a lot of us is that we tend to compare ourselves to others, and we compete, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, with others. So when we're doing that, we're really not being true to ourselves. I believe that the competition that we should have within ourselves, or the comparisons that we should have within ourselves, is that to compare ourselves to our unique gifts and abilities. So our unique gifts and abilities are there. We try to compete and compare ourselves to where we are now, to where we think those abilities are, and get there, instead of trying to be a better podcaster than you. I'm not going to go out and say, okay, I'm going to be like Valeria, right? Am I saying it right, by the way?
Yeah, they say in Portuguese, Valéria. It doesn't really matter. You can call me Valerie.
Okay. But so it's like, like I went to a conference years ago, and I remember them talking about comparing and competing. And I'm like, wow, I got that poison inside of me. And all of a sudden I was aware that I was 34 years old at the time. And I realized that for whether it was 20, 25 years or so, I was comparing and competing with like people unconsciously or subconsciously. I'm like, oh my God. And I had this big enlightenment. Like, who have I been doing this with? And it caused me to reflect and be introspective for a period of 3 months. If I can share this with you, this was a great story for me. So when I realized I had this inside of me, and I didn't want it, I was like, I got to get this poison out. And what happened was I was questioning for 3 months. I was questioning who I was, what my motives were. Anytime I said something or did something, was I doing it to look good, to be better, or better than somebody else, or get more attention than somebody else? And I was in a real funk. And every day I was waking up and I was like totally like bummed out and disappointed with myself, right? So what happened was I said, all right, how do I get out of this? And I went into my bathroom one day. I'm looking in the mirror. I'm like, all right, I got to step outside of myself and see myself through my own eyes and see what I see. And it didn't work. I'm like, darn it. I thought I had it. I thought I had the answer, right? And then I came back the next day and I'm like, let me try this. I'm going to step outside of myself, and I'm going to see myself through God's eyes and see what I see. And it was like a light switch went off. I'm like, oh my gosh, how does he see me? He sees me perfect as I am. And when that happened, I was like, the funk went away. I'm like, Rob, just be true to yourself, be your true self, not your false self, and love yourself for who you are. And it was an amazing transformation for me.
Wow. That might be what we call unconditional self-love, right? We just spoke earlier.
Correct. I believe that. Great point.
Yeah. And then this thing about being true to yourself, I wonder how we balance being true to ourselves and the desire to please others, and also being there for others.
You ever see the movie Braveheart?
Yes, yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, wonderful movie.
Yeah, and I think about how William Wallace, the guy, he was getting up every day. He was willing to die of himself for his countrymen and for his land. And I think of that, and I think, when we get up every day, or when I get up every day, am I willing to die of my false self to be truly who I am? And that's an up at dawn, down at dusk task for some people. For me, I could say it is. And, when you get up in the morning, are you being true to yourself, or you're trying to be better? Like you're trying to be like Mike, or more beautiful than Susan? That's false self stuff. And so it's like, are you willing to die your false self every day to be truly who you're supposed to be? That's the question I think you got to ask yourself every day.
Yeah, right. Can you tell me what it feels like? How do we know for sure when we are acting from our false self?
So I think that's where the awareness comes in. And I think the sharper your awareness is, the sooner you know that you did something out of the truthfulness of yourself or out of the bull crap or BS that you're trying to prove. So for instance, let's use my book, for example. If I've given or sold some books and I know people have my book, right? And I say, well, did you read it yet? Right. So then the question, I asked the question, did you read it yet? Now, why did I ask the question? The false self asked the question because the false self wants acknowledgement, right? I want to hear you say, hey, Rob, it was a great job, a good book. And I'm just looking for acknowledgement. I think the true self is like just curious to know, hey, did you read the book? What did you think? And I think there can be a fine line there sometimes. I think I know, we all know, especially if our awareness is sharper, we know when we're being our true selves and when we're being our false selves. We know that.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to what you speak about. You teach self-awareness and self-knowledge, right? So you wrote that the journey to fulfillment begins with an awareness of who you really are. And we have been talking about this self-awareness and true self and knowing the difference. What is that fulfilled life? You talked before also about a place that's always changing. There's no destination really. So how do we know that we are living that fulfilled life? And is that an ever-changing one kind of state, or it's something that we achieve and then we have a reference for, and then we keep practicing or trying to relive that kind of life?
Great. Another great question. As you're talking to me, I'm in my home office and I have this whiteboard up on the wall, and that whiteboard was the makings of the book. And what I have 16 one-word chapter titles up there, and I have about 60 stories written amongst those chapters, which ended up in the book there. And I'm looking back, and I think when we have the ability to reflect back on our stories and our lives, and we can see what we've learned from it, be it good or bad. And if it's bad and we learn something, was it ever bad?
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So when I see that and I look at it, I'm like, I can be fulfilled. I can have this feeling of fulfillment in the sense, I did the best I could in that situation. I learned from it. I'm happy. I'm grateful that happened, even though it didn't taste good in the moment. But now I see the lesson. I see what it did for me, not to me, and understand that is part of my journey and growing and learning and becoming the best person I can be, because I can be fulfilled in a moment, but then I can go off and get agitated by something else and say, okay, how do I get back to that grounded place of fulfillment? By reflecting on the stories and lessons that made me who I am.
Right. So it becomes a reference once you know. Yeah, for sure. And do you believe that only takes experience? Can we learn what a fulfilled life is by, I don't know, example, like from somebody else without experience? Is that possible?
I think you can learn maybe the hows, but you have to experience it yourself. That's just my opinion. I don't know if there's any proof of that, but I guess the point that goes back to my book. If my stories could be the example for you, right? And then all of a sudden you say, wow, I had a similar story to that. Let me reflect on that story. And then all of a sudden you could be fulfilled in the moment from reflecting on your own story that was triggered by my story. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah, very much. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of stories, what is the most inspirational personal story that you have experienced on awareness? The most inspirational and powerful that you think most people can relate to?
Wow, I'm looking at my board at all these stories, and
right.
Gosh, I don't know if I'll give you the most powerful or the most important. I'm looking at them and I'm stalling as I'm talking to you, and I'm thinking, which one of these powerful stories? I mean, so I would say this, and it comes from gratitude. I'm not going to say this is the most powerful, but I think this is impactful for people to think about. So there are seasons in life, right? And we all experience seasons of life. And sometimes when a season of friendship ends, when a season of like maybe your child going off to college, when or you lose a job or you quit a job or you start a business, there's seasons. So what happens sometimes when I'll use relationships in this example, when a relationship ends, are you bitter about it? Are you angry about it, in the moment? Or do you sit back and reflect and say, I'm grateful for the time I had with that person? And there was a moment for me that this occurred. And what happened, it was just a friendship of mine that it just, we were buddies and for a long, long time. And we did a business deal together and it didn't work out. And then we went astray. And, I think I can only speak for me. There might have been resentment. There might have been bitterness. There might have been hurt. And because I was hurt by the season ending, I was bitter that I was never going to have that relationship again. And then when I had this moment of thinking, you know what? Why be bitter about it? Why be angry about it? Be grateful for the time I had with that person in my life. And then you understand it. All seasons end. They do. And they change. And you go into other relationships and other experiences and other friendships. And being grateful is, I think, the foundation for all of that.
Wow. That is so true. Gratitude, it can change everything.
And can I share one more with you? And I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So because just something else just hit me. I had a conversation with this guy years ago, and he was a pastor, I believe. And I don't know religion, and not that matters, but he said to me, he said, Rob, he goes, you will go to the next level in your life and in your business when you start listening and trusting that voice inside of you. And I'll never forget those words. And what happened one time, I was asked to speak to a group of prisoners in the prison in Maryland. And I said, yes, I'll do it. And after I said yes, I'm like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? Right.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give these guys a message of hope, not just any old speech. And the voice inside of me was saying, Jailbreak is the title of your speech. And I'm like, this is great. I'm fired up. I'm like, there couldn't be a better title for a speech in jail, right? And then I started saying, I can't do that. I started fighting that great idea, right? I started fighting and saying, who might think I can do that? The guards are going to cock their rifles, and it's going to be mayhem inside a prison if I use that as a title of the speech. And then I thought about what that guy said to me. He said, you will go to that next level in your life and your business when you start trusting that voice inside of you. And so in that moment, when I had that thought, I'm like, Jailbreak is going to be the title of my speech. And I could go on for 5 or 10 minutes on a story here, but I went into prison. I did this speech and I titled it Jailbreak. And it was an unbelievable experience with 20 guys in a room in a prison in Maryland that occurred maybe, I'm going to guess 12, 13, 14 years ago. And if I wouldn't have listened to that voice, it wouldn't have had the impact that it had.
Yeah. So listening to that voice and trusting, it's all about trust, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so true. When I saw the title of your book, Better Than You Think, it made me think about gratitude, it made me think about purpose, meaning, but also being grateful. And that's something that could be misunderstood, perhaps. How can we think this way? My life can be better than I think. What about gratitude, being grateful for what we have and not being greedy and not trying to achieve more and always thinking that way? How can we balance that?
And that's very hard to do. So I don't know. You said you read some of it, not all of it, but so there's later on in the book, there's a chapter called The Magic of Gratitude and Blessings. We get anxious and we get fearful when we're striving for things we don't have, and we want this, we want this, and we want that, and we're constantly thinking about what we don't have. And in that moment, I don't think we're in a great place of peace or calm. But when we are grateful for what we have, then the other stuff will come in time, or if it's even supposed to. But being grateful for what you have is I think it's people have to reflect on that. And quite honestly, if I can explain to you how the title came about, it has to do with that. I was going back and forth with the editor. I must have had 40, 42, 43, 45 different titles that we were trying to pick. and I was struggling to pick one. And I woke up one morning and I came into my home office and I looked at my board and I looked at all these experiences in my life and all these stories. And I sit there sometimes and think, I wish I had this. I wish I had that. I wish this was better. Right. And I was looking at this board and the light bulb went off. I had that moment of awareness. The light bulb went off and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at this board. I'm looking at these stories. I'm like, my life is better than I thought it was. And that's where the title came from, Better Than You Think.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. So this state of gratitude can give us this insight in how our lives can be better. So it's not the opposite. We don't have to be ungrateful. We can't ignore the things we have and just always look forward and into the future. Right. That makes a lot of sense to me. I have another question for you here about your children. Do you teach them about awareness and the lessons you have in your book? Do you try to pass this on to them?
Yes, I do. And it's hard because sometimes you have to let them experience it at their pace. You want to jam things down others' throats, and you want people to get things when you want them to get them. The only thing I've learned, the one thing I've learned as a parent is being resilient, number one, and continuing to persevere and instill the message over and over again and be the example. And eventually, because children, they catch more than they hear. Does that make sense? So they're gonna catch more of what you're doing than hear what you're saying. And that's, you talked about earlier, how when do you feel fulfilled? And it's like in that moment when they got it. And that's like, okay, that was worth the 1 million times I said,
yeah. The repetition, right? That's cute. Talk to me about transparency. Is it the same as being honest?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a synonym or not. I guess it's on the same wavelength, but transparency to me is like, it's in the book and talks about, like, when I was young, I'm one of 7 kids. I grew up in Northeast Baltimore City, and I had the mentality you had to be a tough guy. And if you weren't a tough guy, you were weak. But I'm a sensitive guy. I'm a passionate guy, and I'm an intense guy. And I was afraid to show, I guess, my passion in terms of my sensitivity at times. And if I cried about something, I was a weak person. I cry about everything now.
That's great.
But transparency is like, just when I was 34 years old, when I heard it's explained in a different frame of mind, that being transparent, like, is being truly who you are. And the more transparent you are, the more attractive you become. And that was a gift. That was a gift in that moment to understand that.
Yeah, right. Wow. I heard something that I will never forget. Let me see if I remember the phrase exactly. When we hide parts of ourselves, we hide everything. And that's true, isn't it? I often reflect about it.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah, and especially women. I think men too, it's interesting, but we do that more. We try to hide parts of ourselves, physically especially, trying to look in a certain way. Well, life is, it's not easy. It's a practice, isn't it? It's a beautiful practice.
Oh, yeah, and you just got to keep practicing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a few questions for you about your book, about resisting life and accepting life. Can you give them some examples of that?
So when am I resisting life? So it's like when that voice is talking to you and it's giving you something good and you keep downplaying, like, no, I can't do that, or who am I to think I can do that? I'm resisting it in the moment. I've read in a book one time by Matthew Kelly. And he says, in the book, he says, most people experience resistance the moment their alarm clock goes off every morning. And you're like, what do you mean by that? And if you hit your snooze button the first time that alarm goes off in the morning, you're resisting the day immediately. You're resisting the wake-up call to get up and go. And you experience resistance right away. And am I fighting that voice? Am I fighting my intuition? Am I fighting my values? Am I going against the values? Then I'm resisting life. If I hear that voice and I act on it, then I'm accepting of that. right? If I hear that, who knows what the outcome is going to be, but you did your best. I talk about, like one of my favorite affirmations is I love and accept myself for who I am and where I am in my journey in life. And I love and accept others for who they are and where they are on their journey in life. And to me, the acceptance piece in life is about going with the flow. And even a bigger word is surrender. Surrender, and if I can surrender to what's supposed to be, then I'm more accepting of life. If I don't surrender, I'm resisting.
That's so true. I have a few more questions for you. I call them, that's the final questions, general questions. So before I do that, would you like to add anything, read a passage in your book?
So you talked about transparency, right? So there's a poem, but it would take me a minute to read it. Great. So I was the way this came about. I went to a networking event. It was only 6 people, per table, so to speak. And we were taught that, hey, most people, they go to these networking events, they give a business card and they say a little blurb about themselves and they're on to the next person instead of trying to get to know somebody. So this guy who was heading this group, he said, I want you all to get out a piece of paper and I want you to write the words I am at the very top of the page. And what he told us, he goes, you're going to take 20 minutes and I want you to write a poem. The poem is titled I Am, and you're going to write a poem about yourself. And then you're going to read it to the group, and that's how people are going to get to know who you are. So can I read this?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So the title of the poem is I Am. And it goes, I am from a higher power. I choose to call him God. I am from all his descendants all the way down the line to now 2 people, Loretta and Marshall, my mother and father. I'm from Italian immigrant and a red-haired German. I'm from a family of 7 children growing up initially in a 2-bedroom house in Baltimore City. I'm from an age where I never heard the words, I love you from my father until I was 34. Therefore, I'm from a lower self-esteem. I'm from a devout Catholic mother. I'm from beginning my work career at age 11, from buying my first pair of Jack Purcells to buying my first car at age 16, my 1969 Ford Fairlane. I'm from a competitive family because I always fought to get what was mine and keep it. I'm from paying my own tuition through high school and college. I'm from Florida Atlantic University, where I played baseball and became a man. I'm from AC/DC, Def Leppard, Ozzy Osbourne. Now I'm from Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Mike Kelly, and more. I'm from the field of dreams, the baseball field, which is a metaphor for life. I'm from the 5-pound block of cheese we waited for every week or so from social services when we struggled financially. I'm from a motivation to be all I can be because I attended the school of hard knocks. I'm from being a dad at age 17 to being a grandfather at age 43. I'm from always wanting things to be about me to now wanting things and my motivations to always be about impacting and improving the lives of others. I'm from a world of abundance, wisdom, experience, and knowledge. I'm from a fire that burns within me to reach my full potential to be all I can be. I'm from a family now of Debbie, my wife, Crystal, Robbie, and Amanda, my children, Bobby, my son-in-law, and Karina, my granddaughter. I'm from being a mentor and a coach. I'm from a business owner and a real estate team of 5 to an inspiring speaker of thousands. I'm from all that life is. I am who I am. Who are you?
Wow, that should have been the first page of your book.
You'll cry in the first chapter. Well, you may have already read it. I don't know.
That's beautiful, though. Really beautiful. How you said it all.
So if we all did that, if everybody did that and was honest with themselves, imagine how cool that would be for somebody to get to know you that much about you in 1 minute or 1 minute and a half.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has been a beautiful conversation, honest and open, fun. You're a lot of fun the way you speak. Thank you. I'll be asking you my final questions. It's about life. So how do you define success? What is to be successful?
For me, it's making the most of all the God-given abilities and talents that I've been given and using them to the best of my abilities.
What was the hardest lesson to learn about yourself?
So there's lessons I've learned and there's lessons I've learned about myself.
Okay, they're different sections.
So I think one of the hardest things was I told you about the time when I realized that I was subconsciously comparing and competing myself with others. And therefore I was judging others and I wasn't being true to myself. And like I said, I went to like a 3-month funk where I'm like, I don't even know who the heck I am. And when I stepped outside of myself and tried to see myself through God's eyes, it was like, wow, I see myself, perfect as I am, perfect the way he made me.
And that's the lesson about yourself. Is there another one, a hardest lesson in general?
Yeah. There's many of them.
Yeah.
It's so there was years ago, when I was, again, I told you where I came from, humble beginnings, and I was like 33, 34 years old, 33 I think now at the time, and I come from the inner city, 2-bedroom house, and I had a net worth of about $750,000, and I said, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 35. And what happened in the next 3 months, I lost $450,000. And it was a very hard thing to do, to experience, because, where I came from, and I built all that up, and then I lost it all. And then I had to go in and tell my wife while she was changing our 3-month-old baby's diaper that I had lost all the money that I'd earned and made, and all that was left was the equity in our house and some of our retirement plan. That was a scary day.
Yeah, well, that would be for anyone. Right. If you knew you would die soon, would you make any changes about your life? Do anything differently?
The one thing I started working on, it was January of 2019, is surrender. So when I change something, I would continue to work on surrendering as much as possible, because I think the more you surrender, the freer you become.
I believe that too. Yeah, absolutely believe that. But that goes back to what I was trying to say earlier about even if we don't surrender, it's important to accept that too. That brings peace, right? Accepting even what we cannot accept. What are 3 things about life you know for sure as of today?
The more you work on your awareness, this is one, the more you work on your awareness, the more you're going to enjoy the life you live. I believe that wholeheartedly. For sure, I know the sun's right now. The sun's going down today, and it's coming up tomorrow morning. I know that for sure. But I know that there's a God. I know that He's my God. He's our God, and I know He's got me in the palm of His hands. I know that for sure. Do we always see it, feel it, know it? No, not always, because you go through these trials and tribulations. But I know He's there. I'm sure of that. And then I'm sure life, I guess this might be the last thing, life is going to give to you what you give to it.
Yeah, it all makes sense to me. A lot of sense. Thank you so much, Rob. It has been a wonderful conversation. Meaningful. You made me think. Yeah, reflect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Where can we find more information about you, your book, products, services, and future projects?
So I have a website. It's www.robcommodariauthor.com. And then the email address is rob@robcommodariauthor.com.
Thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon.
It was great to meet you over the phone here, and great talking to you. I enjoyed the conversation, and I wish all the best for you, Valeria.
Thank you, Rob. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Robert Commodari, please visit his website, robcommodariauthor.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. I want to thank the Patreon members, Lawrence McGrath, Mark Basden, Terry Clayton, and Aidan Vickrock. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.